The apartment felt impossibly small that night. Rain pattered against the windows, a gentle soundtrack to the collapse of my world. I stood there, frozen, staring at her phone on the coffee table. She'd left it unlocked, careless or maybe subconsciously wanting to be caught. The messages between her and Mike, my best friend since college, scrolled endlessly upward. 6 months of lies, 6 months of working late and girls' nights out. I remember touching the screen with trembling fingers, reading words that burned themselves into my memory. I miss you. Last night was amazing. When can we meet again? David will be at that conference all weekend. My name so casually dropped between their plans, the conference I'd been preparing for months, the one Emma had encouraged me to attend, insisting I shouldn't miss this opportunity. Now I understood why. There were photos, too. Photos taken in our bed, our goddamn bed. The front door clicked open. I heard Emma's laugh, then the rustle of shopping bags. I didn't move, couldn't move. My body felt disconnected from my mind, which was racing through 5 years of memories, re-examining every moment for signs I'd missed. David. You're home early. Her voice was bright, normal. How many times had she greeted me like this after being with him? She walked into the living room, her smile faltering when she saw me standing there with her phone. The recognition in her eyes was immediate. She knew exactly what I'd seen. David, I can explain. How long? My voice sounded strange, hollow. It's not what you think. I looked up at her then. The woman I'd planned to propose to next month, the ring was hidden in my desk drawer. 6 months, I said, not a question, with Mike in our bed. She started crying then, moving toward me, reaching out. I stepped back. Don't. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. I laughed, a harsh sound I barely recognized. 6 months of mistakes, and with my best friend. Please, David, we can work through this. I love you. It was just I was feeling neglected and… Stop. I held up my hand. I don't want to hear it, not tonight. I walked past her to our bedroom, pulled out a duffel bag and started packing essentials. She followed, pleading, explaining, crying. I moved around her like she was a piece of furniture, focusing only on what I needed to take. In the bathroom, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I looked the same. Somehow that seemed wrong. Shouldn't there be visible damage, a mark to show that everything had changed? 20 minutes later, I was ready to leave. Emma blocked the doorway, mascara streaking down her face. Where are you going? We need to talk about this. I'll be at Alex's, I said, naming my cousin. I'll come get the rest of my things later. David, please, don't throw away 5 years over one mistake. That word again, mistake. As if sleeping with my best friend repeatedly for half a year could be classified as an accident. Move, Emma. My voice was quiet but firm. She must have seen something in my eyes because she stepped aside. As I walked to the door, I paused by the dining table, pulled out a notepad from the drawer and wrote 6 words. You broke us. I'm breaking free. I left the note on the table, walked out and closed the door softly behind me. I didn't go to Alex's. I drove around for hours, eventually checking into a motel far from our neighborhood. I called in sick to work the next day, then the day after that. Emma called constantly. Mike too. I blocked both numbers. On the 3rd day, I walked into my bank and withdrew a significant portion of my savings. Not all of it. I wasn't that impulsive, but enough. I returned to the motel and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. What was I doing? What was my plan? The truth was, I didn't have one. I just knew I couldn't go back to that apartment, couldn't face either of them, couldn't stand the thought of the inevitable conversations, the explanations, the apologies, the decision about whether to try to salvage what remained of our relationship. So I did something I'd never done before. Something completely out of character for reliable, predictable David Chen. I disappeared, not in the dramatic, change my identity way of movies, just gone. I drove north, crossing state lines, using cash for everything. I tossed my phone into a river after sending one text to my parents, I'm okay. Need time, will contact you when ready, love you. I knew they'd worry, but they'd also respect my wishes. My parents had always given me space when I needed it. I ended up in a small coastal town in Oregon, the kind of place tourists visit briefly before moving on to more exciting destinations. I found a room to rent from an elderly woman who didn't ask many questions, and a job at a local hardware store under my middle name, James. Not a fake identity, I still used my real social security number for the necessary paperwork, but enough distance from my old life. And then, I just lived. Day by day, the pain didn't disappear, but it changed form. The sharp, stabbing agony of betrayal gradually transformed into a dull, persistent ache. I made acquaintances but no close friends. I dated occasionally but never seriously. I was polite, pleasant, and completely forgettable to most people I met. My parents knew where I was after the first year. I called them on their anniversary, unable to maintain my silence any longer. They wanted to visit, but I asked them not to. They respected that, though I could hear the hurt in my mother's voice. We established a routine of weekly calls, during which we carefully avoided discussing Emma or my old life. I didn't ask about her, and they didn't volunteer information. Sometimes I wondered if they were still in touch with her parents, who they'd grown close to over the years, but I never asked. 3 years passed this way, not unhappy years exactly, but not fully lived either. I existed in a kind of limbo, neither moving forward nor looking back, until the day she found me. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon at Harborside Hardware. I was inventorying paint supplies when the bell above the door jingled. I didn't look up immediately. Ted, the owner, was at the counter to greet customers. "Excuse me," a familiar voice said. "I'm looking for someone who works here. His name is David Chen." The clipboard nearly slipped from my hands. I remained frozen in the paint aisle out of sight. "Sorry, miss," I heard Ted reply. "Don't have anyone by that name. Got a James Chen, though." A pause. James is his middle name. Another pause. I could picture Ted's confusion. "Let me check in the back," he said finally. Moments later, Ted appeared at the end of the aisle. "James, there's a lady asking for you. Called you David, though." I nodded, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Thanks, Ted." "I'll handle it." He gave me a curious look but didn't press. One of the things I appreciated about Ted was his respect for privacy. I took a deep breath and walked to the front of the store, and there she was, Emma. Her hair was shorter now, falling just below her shoulders instead of down her back. She was thinner than I remembered, with slight shadows under her eyes. She wore a simple blue dress and clutched a small purse with white-knuckled fingers. For a moment we just stared at each other. "David," she whispered finally, "how did you find me?" My voice came out steadier than I expected. "Your mother." Of course, my mother had always liked Emma, probably felt sorry for her. "I'd like to talk," she said. "Please." I glanced at Ted, who was pretending not to listen while restocking a shelf nearby. "My shift ends at 5. I'll wait." She gestured to a coffee shop across the street. "I'll be there." I nodded once and returned to the paint aisle, my hands shaking slightly as I picked up the clipboard again. The remaining hours of my shift crawled by. I considered simply leaving through the back door, avoiding the conversation entirely, but I'd been running for 3 years. Maybe it was time to stop. At 5 o'clock precisely, I crossed the street to the coffee shop. Emma sat at a corner table, 2 cups in front of her. She'd remembered how I took my coffee. That small detail hit me harder than I expected. I sat down across from her, wrapping my hands around the warm cup. "You look good," she said softly. I didn't return the compliment, though it would have been true. "What do you want, Emma?" She flinched slightly at my tone, but met my gaze directly. "First, to apologize, though I know that's not enough." "No, it's not. I've spent 3 years thinking about what I'd say if I ever saw you again. And now that you're here, none of it seems adequate." I took a sip of coffee, waiting. "What I did was unforgivable," she continued. "I destroyed something precious, something real, and I've been paying for it every day since you left." Her voice cracked. "But I'm not here to ask for forgiveness or reconciliation. I don't expect that." "Then why are you here?" Emma reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. She placed it carefully on the table between us. "This belongs to you." I made no move to take it. "What is it?" "Open it." Reluctantly, I picked up the envelope and looked inside. It contained a check, a large one. "What's this for?" "It's your share of the house." I looked up, confused. "We didn't own a house." "No, but we were saving for one." She took a deep breath. "After you left, I kept adding to the fund we'd started. Every month, the same amount we'd agreed on, half for you, half for me, plus interest." I stared at the check, then back at her. "Why?" "Because it was yours, your dream, your plan. Just because I ruined everything else didn't mean I should take that too." She pushed the check closer to me. I don't expect this to change anything. I just wanted you to have what's rightfully yours. I folded the check and returned it to the envelope but didn't put it in my pocket. Is that all? Almost, she hesitated. There's something else you should know. Mike and I, we aren't together. We never were, not really. What happened between us was, she trailed off, then continued more firmly. No, I won't make excuses. What happened was wrong, period, but it ended the day you found out. He's tried to contact you too, you know. I blocked his number. I know, he feels terrible about what happened. I don't care how he feels, she nodded. That's fair. We sat in silence for a moment, the sounds of the coffee shop, the hiss of the espresso machine, quiet conversations, the clink of cups filling the space between us. I have one question, I said finally. Anything. Why, Emma? She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was quiet but clear. I could give you the reasons I've told myself, that I felt neglected, that I was insecure, that I was afraid of how perfect things seemed between us. But the truth is simpler and uglier. I was selfish. I made a series of choices knowing they would hurt you if you found out, and I convinced myself you never would. I betrayed you because, in those moments, my desires mattered more to me than your trust. She met my eyes directly. That's the truth, David, the unvarnished, awful truth. Her honesty knocked the wind out of me. I'd expected justifications, explanations designed to distribute the blame, not this raw accountability. Thank you, I said quietly. For that, at least. She nodded, tears filling her eyes but not falling. I should go. I'm staying at the inn by the harbor for 2 days if you want to talk more. I didn't respond to that. Instead, I asked, how are my parents, really? They don't tell me everything, I know. A small, sad smile touched her lips. They're well. Your dad's knee surgery went perfectly. Your mom's garden won first prize at the community show last summer. And they told you where to find me. Not exactly. Your mother mentioned you were in Oregon, working at a hardware store. I visited 17 hardware stores in coastal Oregon towns before I found you. That surprised me. Why go to all that trouble? Because I needed to make things right, whatever that means now. She stood up, gathering her purse. The check is yours, regardless of whether you cash it. I watched her walk to the door, feeling something shift inside me. Not forgiveness. I wasn't there yet, might never be, but perhaps the beginning of closure. Emma, I called. She turned, hope flickering briefly across her face. Thank you for telling me the truth. She nodded once, then left, the bell above the door jingling softly behind her. I didn't go to the harbor in that night or the next day. I went to work as usual, though Ted noticed my distraction. Everything okay with that lady friend of yours? He asked during a quiet moment. She's not my friend, I replied. She's my past. Ted nodded sagely. Past has a way of becoming present when we least expect it. On the evening of the second day, I found myself walking toward the harbor anyway. The sun was setting, casting long shadows and painting the water gold. I hadn't planned to go there, had actively decided against it, yet my feet carried me forward. The inn was a charming 2-story building with flower boxes in the windows. I hesitated at the entrance, still unsure why I'd come, to tell her I couldn't forgive her. To ask more questions, to say a proper goodbye. Before I could decide, the door opened and Emma emerged, pulling a small suitcase. She froze when she saw me. David, you're leaving, I said unnecessarily. My flight's early tomorrow. I was going to have dinner at the restaurant down the street before turning in. We stood awkwardly for a moment. Then, surprising myself, I asked, would you like company? The restaurant was quiet, mostly empty on a weekday evening. We were seated by a window overlooking the harbor, the last light of day fading into dusk. I didn't think you'd come, Emma said after we'd ordered. Neither did I. I twisted my water glass slowly. I'm not sure why I'm here. Maybe for the same reason I came looking for you, closure. I considered this. Maybe. Or maybe to tell me you can't forgive me. That would be fair. I looked at her then, really looked at her. The Emma I'd known and loved. The Emma who had betrayed me in the most painful way possible. The Emma who had tracked me down across multiple states to give me my share of a dream we'd once shared. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly, but I think I need to try, not for you, but for me. Because carrying this anger and pain for 3 years hasn't healed me, it's just kept me frozen. I understand, she hesitated. For what it's worth, I've changed. Therapy, a lot of it. Learning to be honest with myself first, then with others. Our food arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. When the server left, I asked, "Are you happy, Emma, in your life now?" She considered the question carefully. "Not happy exactly, content sometimes. I'm doing meaningful work, I switched careers, I'm a counselor now, I have good friends, but there's always this awareness of what I lost. What I threw away." She looked up at me. "And you, are you happy here?" It was my turn to consider. "I'm at peace mostly. This place has been good for me, simple, quiet. But is it enough? The David I knew had big dreams. The David you knew doesn't exist anymore." She nodded slowly. "I understand that. I'm sorry I'm partly responsible for that change." We ate in silence for a while, not uncomfortable but thoughtful. "What happens now?" she asked eventually. "Now, we finish dinner, then you go home and I stay here." "Is that what you want?" The question hung between us. Was it what I wanted? For 3 years I'd lived in suspension, neither moving forward nor going back. The comfortable numbness of my existence here had become a kind of safety. "I don't know what I want anymore," I admitted, "but I know I can't go back to who we were. Too much has changed." "I'm not asking for that," she said quickly. I miss knowing you're in the world, David, even if we're not together. Even if we're just distant friends who check in occasionally." I considered this. Could we be something other than lovers or strangers? Was there a middle ground? "I'm not ready for friendship," I said finally. "But maybe someday." She smiled, a small, sad smile. "That's more than I came here hoping for." After dinner, I walked her back to the inn. We stood outside, the streetlights casting a soft glow around us. "My flight's at 7 a.m., she said, "so I guess this is goodbye." I nodded. "Goodbye, Emma." She hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "My contact information, if you ever want to, I don't know, talk or just to let me know you're okay." I took the card, slipping it into my pocket. Then, surprising both of us, I stepped forward and hugged her briefly. She stiffened in shock before relaxing slightly, her arms coming up to return the embrace. I stepped back quickly. "Safe travels," I said, then turned and walked away. I didn't look back, but I could feel her watching me until I turned the corner. The weight I'd carried for 3 years didn't disappear, but it shifted, becoming something I could bear more easily. Back in my apartment, I sat on the edge of my bed and pulled out the business card and the check. Physical reminders of a past I'd tried to outrun. I stared at them for a long time, then reached for my phone and composed a text to my parents. "I'm thinking about coming home for Christmas. Not to stay, just to visit. Is that okay?" The response came almost immediately, as if they'd been waiting by the phone always. "Your room is exactly as you left it. We love you." I smiled, feeling something crack open inside me. Not healing, not yet, but the possibility of it. And for the first time in 3 years, that seemed like enough. The next morning I went to work as usual. Ted glanced up as I entered, his bushy eyebrows raised in question. "Everything okay, James, or should I call you David now?" I smiled slightly. "James is fine." "And yes, I think things are going to be okay." He nodded, satisfied, and handed me a list of inventory to check. As I moved through the familiar aisles, I realized something. I didn't have to decide everything right now. Whether to stay or go, whether to cash the check, whether to reach out to Emma someday. I could take my time, feel my way forward step by step. For 3 years, I disappeared to escape pain. Now, perhaps, it was time to reappear, not as the David who left, but as the person I'd become in the meantime. A person who understood that while betrayal could break you, it didn't have to define you forever. Outside, the coastal fog was lifting, revealing a clear blue sky. I paused by the window, watching seagulls wheel and dive over the harbor. Their freedom suddenly seemed like something attainable, something I might reach for. Not today, perhaps, but soon.